Hello everyone, I'm Andrew, and today we're going to be making fermented salsa. Here's our ingredients, and here's the final product. Alright everyone, so the ingredients we're going to be using is a green bell pepper, 2 large tomatoes, a lime, a lemon, an onion, a jalapeno, a single clove of garlic, some cilantro, the knives we're going to be using, a teaspoon, and then a spoon, and I'm going to be using a lemon squeezer for the lime and the lemons. Alright, to start off, we're going to be cutting our tomatoes. Tomatoes are one of the key ingredients for salsa. Salsa originated in Central America during the Incans and the Mayan empires. They fermented salsa because at the time they didn't have refrigerators. Salsa became known around the world once the Spaniards came to Central America during the 1500s. They discovered the salsa of Central America and then spread it around the world. Alright, now that we have our tomatoes chopped up, we're going to put it into the bowl, which is in here. When you're putting it into the bowl, make sure you get the juices because that will help with the fermentation once we get to that part. Alright, now we are going to be cutting our onion. When we cut onions, this is how I like to do it. You cut off that crusty part, and then I like to cut it in half to give something flat to work with. I have a funny story about my childhood with salsa that I'm going to tell. So when I was about 3 years old, I used to eat salsa, but I ate it a little different than how most people eat salsa. So instead of taking the chip and dipping it in salsa and eating the chip and the salsa, I would just lick the salsa off of the chip. And then I would reuse that same chip and just keep scooping the salsa and eating it, but not the chip. And then I would keep doing that until the chip got soggy, but I still would not eat the chip. I would just lay the chip down on a table and then move on to the next chip. Eventually, my parents learned that little Andrew had to have his own bowl of salsa because nobody likes double dipping. Alright, now that our onions are chopped up, we're going to put it into the bowl, which is still in the sink. Alright, now we're going to be doing our 2 peppers. I like to cut down like this to get rid of the stem, and then just cut off this part because that's a little crusty too. And then you just cut down the sides, and then you can just do this with it. With bell peppers, the seeds aren't really spicy, so you can keep them or get rid of them. It's up to you. I'll probably get rid of it because it's a bunch of white, not good part. Attach the seeds. And now we're just going to cut these up and put them in there. Alright, now we're going to be doing our jalapeno. With the jalapeno, the seeds are a bit spicier, so if you like spicy foods, you'll want to keep the seeds. I will not be keeping the seeds because my family's not a big fan of spicy foods and they might want to try some of the salsa. So I will be trying to get as little of the seeds as possible. Scrape them out. have our peppers cut, we're gonna dump them in there. Remember to get the juices in the bowl as well. All right, now we're going to be doing our clove of garlic. To cut the garlic first, you have to crush it. Careful not to cut yourself. And after you crush it, you're just gonna cut it into very small pieces. You want them small because garlic's very strong and nobody likes to bite into garlic. Okay, now that we have our garlic cut up very small, we're going to dump it in our bowl. All right, now we're going to be cutting our cilantro, and I switched to a drier cutting board because the other one got wet, because you don't want the cilantro to stick and get achy. So now we're just gonna chop it up a little. If there's these big seed stems, get rid of them because you don't really want those. Just pull them off like these. There are different ways you can make salsa. We're fermenting salsa, but you can also make salsa by just putting all your ingredients into a bowl. The type of fermentation that salsa is a lactic acid fermentation. And the fermentation just helps bring out the flavor and all your different ingredients. Makes it really tasty. Okay, now we have our ingredients in a bowl out of the sink. And we are going to be squeezing the lime and just half the lemon into the bowl. We don't want the full lemon. So how we're going to be doing that is using this squeezer. You put the lemon in here and squeeze it. I'll show you in a second. Since we only want half of the lemon, I'm going to cut it in half and just set the part we're not going to use to the side. You also want to cut the lime in half, even though we're using both of them. The squeezer, it's easier if it's in half. So with the squeezer, we're going to place it right here. And I'm just gonna push down and all the juices are gonna just go into it. And it's very satisfying doing this. So now I'll do that with the lemon and the lime. All right, so now we're going to be putting 2 teaspoons of salt. It doesn't have to be any specific salt, but this is the salt we're using. And we're just gonna do that. I'll do it over the sink. We're going to be stirring all our ingredients around to mix the salt into everything. Salt is very important to fermentation because it helps get the juices going and helps sort of, once it ferments, gets the juices around and brings out the flavor. So now we're going to be putting all our ingredients into our mason jars. Make sure when you do this, you wash out your mason jars. Make sure they're clean and dry them off too. All right, we have emptied our bowl. When we do that, you make sure you also pour the juices in there too, because the juices are very important. Once you have everything in there, you want to sort of push everything down to get any extra juices that might be in there to sort of come out. And push it down. I'm using an ice cream scooper to do it because I find that's the easiest. So now we are going to seal the jars. One thing that's important before you seal it is to make sure any extra ingredients you need to make sure everything's inside the liquid, because if it's not inside the liquid, there's a chance that it may mold, and you don't want that in your salsa. So just scoop all of it down into the liquid. And that, if it's in the liquid, it will help prevent it from molding. And now that we've done that, we're going to put our lids on our salsa. Now, once we put the lid on, we're going to seal it for 2 days. But it's not going to stay sealed like this forever. You're going to have to burp your salsa. You can burp it just once each day. That should be enough. But if you ever push down and it feels like there's pressure in there, then that means you need to burp it. So just be careful and check on it. And then after 2 days, you can just put it in the refrigerator and the fermentation's done. And then it's ready to eat. Alright, now I'm going to be trying the salsa. This is a batch of salsa with the same recipe that I made last week. Let's see if it's any good. Yummy in my tummy.